The heartbreak that transformed Winona Ryder, finding purpose beyond fame. They were the couple that looked too good to be true. Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp, young, magnetic, wildly in love. He tattooed Winona forever on his body. She called him her first real love. To the world, it looked like a Hollywood fairy tale in the making. But behind the velvet ropes and flashbulbs, something was breaking. When their 4-year relationship suddenly ended in 1993, it wasn't just the end of a romance, it was the unraveling of an identity, for Winona, and maybe for a whole generation who saw their love as iconic. She was only 19, yet already one of Hollywood's biggest stars. But the heartbreak sent her into a spiral, not just emotionally but existentially. She later said it felt like her own version of Girl Interrupted, life imitating art in the darkest way possible. This wasn't just tabloid gossip, it was a personal collapse hidden in plain sight, and what followed would change her forever. This is the story of how a shattered heart pulled Winona Ryder into the abyss, and how she clawed her way back with purpose, power, and a peace she never thought she'd find. It began like a scene from one of their movies. Intense, electric, and impossibly fast. In 1989, at just 17 years old, Winona Ryder met Johnny Depp at the premiere of Great Balls of Fire. Their eyes locked across the room. Within 5 months, they were engaged. Hollywood couldn't get enough of them. They co-starred in Edward Scissorhands, shared red carpet moments that looked like magazine covers, and fed the media a love story for the ages. Johnny even had his now infamous Winona Forever tattoo inked onto his arm, a gesture that made headlines and captured the intensity of their bond. Winona later said it was her first real love, a fiercely deep love, the kind that burns its shape into your soul. They weren't just in love, they were part of each other, but love that burns that hot doesn't always last. And when the fairy tale began to crack, it shattered them both. In June 1993, their relationship ended. The tattoo was altered to read Wino Forever, and Winona, barely out of her teens, was left with more than just a broken engagement. She was left with a broken identity. The news hit like an earthquake through Hollywood and beyond. Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp, over. The couple that symbolized 90s romance had quietly, suddenly, ended. For tabloids it was a frenzy. For fans it was heartbreaking. But for Winona it was something far more devastating. The end of her emotional foundation. She later confessed, "I was very depressed after breaking off my engagement with Johnny. It felt like my girl interrupted real life. She wasn't being dramatic, she was falling apart. While the cameras kept rolling and the studio lights stayed bright, Winona was collapsing in the dark. She was expected to smile for press junkets and deliver powerful performances, all while privately grieving the loss of the person she thought she'd be with forever. And this wasn't a quiet grief, it was paralyzing. She didn't just lose a partner, she lost her sense of self. The public didn't see that. But inside, she was unraveling. After the breakup, Winona Ryder didn't just feel sad, she felt hollow. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped caring for herself. She later admitted, "I just wasn't taking care of myself." Anxiety crept in, depression took root. She was stuck in a silent war, between what the world expected and what she actually felt. At one point, while filming a role that required her to wear fake bruises, something clicked. She looked in the mirror and thought, "This is what I'm doing to myself inside." That moment of clarity didn't fix everything, but it opened a door. She started to see her own pain, not as weakness, but as something real, something that needed compassion. Still, the spiral continued. She stayed busy, chasing work, clinging to relationships. But it was all noise. Inside, she was searching for something to hold on to. And she didn't know who she was without him, or without the applause. In the eyes of the world, Winona Ryder was thriving. She was booking major roles, earning Oscar nominations, walking red carpets in designer gowns. But none of it mattered, not really. Behind the scenes, she was running on empty. The breakup had cracked her, but Hollywood demanded perfection. No time to grieve, no space to fall apart. She later said, "You can't look to the industry to validate you as a person." But that's exactly what she'd been doing. Her self-worth had become tangled in box office numbers, magazine covers, and fan adoration. And when the love ended, the spotlight suddenly felt cold. She tried to fill the void, with work, with new relationships, with anything that might bring her back to life. But each attempt only reminded her of what she'd lost. By the early 2000s, the pressure erupted in a very public way. Winona was arrested for shoplifting in Beverly Hills. The world mocked her. But behind that act was something darker, a subconscious cry for help. She wasn't stealing for thrills. She was trying to hit pause on a life that no longer felt like her own. The arrest wasn't the end, it was the wake-up call, a jarring public unraveling that forced Winona to finally stop running. In the quiet that followed, she began to do the work, not for a role, not for a comeback, but for herself. She started therapy, and one therapist gave her a life-altering exercise. Imagine your younger self watching how you're treating yourself right now. That image struck her hard. She began to realize the emotional bruises she'd been carrying were deep, and largely self-inflicted. For the first time, she saw herself not as a failed star or ex-fiancé, but as a hurting human being who deserved care. This wasn't instant healing, but it was the first honest step towards something real. A slow climb out of the pain, not by chasing the past, but by facing the present. She wasn't healed, but she was finally awake. For years, Winona Ryder had been defined by others. The ingenue, the it girl, Johnny Depp's fiancée, a rising star whose face was everywhere, and whose identity was everywhere but within. When the relationship ended, and the applause began to fade, a terrifying question emerged. Who am I if I'm not loved, if I'm not working, if I'm not Winona Ryder the world expects me to be? She later admitted, I didn't know who I was outside of acting. Hollywood had trained her to believe her worth was in her roles, her image, her relevance. But now, stripped of romance and fame, she had nothing to hide behind. The more she searched, the less she recognized herself. And the deeper she fell into self-doubt and emotional chaos. Even her rebound relationships felt hollow, desperate attempts to plug a leak that kept widening. She was famous, she was admired, and she was completely lost. The shoplifting incident, a silent scream. In 2001, the headlines exploded. Winona Ryder arrested for shoplifting at Saks Fifth Avenue. The world laughed, late-night hosts made jokes, tabloids had a field day. But beneath the surface, this wasn't about stolen merchandise. It was a manifestation of something much deeper, and much darker. Winona later reflected, psychologically, I must have been at a place where I just wanted to stop, not steal, stop performing, stop pretending, stop being what everyone else wanted her to be. The incident was her breaking point, a public crack in the Hollywood facade. And as embarrassing as it was, it also became her escape hatch. Because from that low point, she finally made a radical decision. To disappear, to retreat, to find out who she was without cameras, scripts, or a famous partner by her side. Choosing silence, her retreat from the spotlight. After the arrest, Winona didn't fight for redemption in the press. She didn't spin a narrative. She simply disappeared. She stepped out of the Hollywood machine and into obscurity, on purpose. No paparazzi, no premieres, no new roles. Instead, she returned to her hometown of San Francisco. She enrolled in college classes. She studied literature and law. She climbed redwood trees with environmental activists. For the first time since her teenage years, Winona was living a life that had nothing to do with fame. No cameras, no scripts, no headlines, just books, nature, and quiet. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. She started healing. She began rebuilding herself. Not as a celebrity, but as a person. A woman no longer chasing love or applause, but meaning. The reset rediscovering Winona beyond Hollywood. Winona's time away wasn't just a pause, it was a reset. She was no longer chasing scripts, she was chasing clarity. In those quiet years, she rediscovered old passions, reading, learning, being present with family and real friends. She started therapy in earnest. She listened, really listened, to advice from mentors she'd once brushed off. One had told her, this is going to pass. At the time, she couldn't hear it. Now, she finally could. The fog of depression didn't lift overnight, but day by day it got lighter, and eventually she stopped defining herself by what she had lost. She no longer needed to be Hollywood's darling. She didn't need to be half of a power couple. She had become something more powerful, someone at peace with who she was, even off camera. Nature, books, and therapy, these became her tools for recovery. Winona's comeback, well, it didn't begin on a movie set. It actually began in a forest, in a classroom, in a therapist's office. She spent time climbing trees with environmentalist Julia Butterfly Hill, not for publicity, but for perspective. She studied literature and constitutional law at Berkeley, quietly, anonymously, and she immersed herself in therapy, not for image rehab, but honestly, for survival. She was rebuilding from the inside out, no more chasing roles to feel whole, no more defining herself by relationships or red carpets. These tools, nature, knowledge, and mental health, became her foundation. They grounded her, softened her, and yeah, they strengthened her. And for the first time in years, she didn't just feel like an actress. She felt like a person. A changed woman, that's what she became. Winona Ryder didn't return to the spotlight as the same woman who left it. She let go of the need to be adored. She let go of Hollywood's obsession with image and youth. She let go of the old belief that love had to look like a movie. But she held on to what mattered: her integrity, her passion for storytelling, and her desire to live life on her own terms. Not the industry's. She no longer craved constant visibility. In fact, she found peace in privacy. She didn't chase headlines. She avoided them. And when love came again, it wasn't loud or performative. It was steady, quiet, and honestly, far from the cameras. She had finally discovered the difference between being seen and being known, between being admired and, well, being whole. Re-entering the spotlight, but this time, totally on her terms. When Winona Ryder finally returned to acting, it wasn't with fanfare. No grand announcements, no desperate comeback tour. She took roles that spoke to her, not to maintain A-list status, but to honor her craft. No pressure to be the star, no need to prove anything. And then, stranger things happened. In 2016, she took on the role of Joyce Byers, a fierce, frantic mother navigating grief and chaos. It was raw, real, and honestly eerily reflective of everything she had lived through. Suddenly she was back in the spotlight, but this time she was grounded. Fame didn't define her, it didn't consume her. She embraced it with humility, even a little disbelief. She joked about how surreal it felt to see people dress up as her character for Halloween, because now, the spotlight wasn't the goal. The work was the reward. Stranger things, wiser choices, the Winonaissance. The world called it a comeback, the Winonaissance. But for Winona, it wasn't about revival, it was about renewal. She approached this second wave of fame with a wisdom born from pain. She became a mentor to younger castmates on Stranger Things, reminding them the work is the reward, not the likes, not the limelight, the work. She no longer needed validation from headlines or box office numbers. She had lived through the crash and come out the other side stronger, more honest, more whole. Fame used to define her. Now it was just a part of her story, not the whole story. And you know, that shift changed everything. She had learned the ultimate lesson. You don't need to chase what's fleeting, you need to protect what's real. The psychology of heartbreak, why it hurts so bad. Heartbreak isn't just emotional, it's biological. Studies show the brain reacts to romantic rejection the same way it responds to physical pain. To your mind, a breakup feels like a burn, a break, a wound. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods your system. Dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals, plummet. Your body literally enters fight-or-flight mode. Sleepless nights, loss of appetite, that tight feeling in your chest. It's not in your head, it's in your nervous system. Winona experienced it all. Insomnia, numbness, emotional paralysis. Because heartbreak isn't just losing a person, it's losing a version of yourself. The shared dreams, the imagined future, gone. That's why the pain runs so deep. You're grieving more than love, you're grieving identity. And that grief, if faced honestly, becomes a portal to transformation, just like it did for her. No contact and rebounds, coping lessons from her story. After her breakup with Johnny Depp, Winona didn't stay friends. She didn't text at midnight. She didn't circle back for closure. She went silent. That silence, whether by choice or necessity, became her sanctuary. Today, therapists call it the no-contact rule, cutting off communication to allow space for real healing, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to breathe. Winona used that time to reflect, not to chase, to feel the pain fully instead of numbing it with distractions. She did, however, try to fill the void. Rebound relationships followed, fleeting, ultimately unfulfilling, because no one can heal you but you. Rebounds offer comfort but not closure. They can distract you from grief, but they can't replace the work of healing. Winona's growth didn't come from dating someone new, it came from dating herself, from reconnecting with who she was without a spotlight or a partner. Men versus women. How breakups play out differently. Heartbreak doesn't discriminate, but, how we process it often does. Men are taught to tough it out, to stay silent, to move on quickly, to replace pain with distraction. Women, on the other hand, are more likely to talk, cry, and reach out. They may feel the pain more intensely at first, but they also process it more directly. Winona grieved openly, not in the tabloids, but in therapy, in solitude, in self-reflection. Johnny Depp, by contrast, moved on swiftly, jumping into another high-profile relationship. It looked like he was fine. But honestly, appearances rarely tell the whole story. Studies show that men often experience a delayed emotional crash after a breakup. Women feel it immediately, but heal more fully over time. The takeaway? Grief looks different, but it's still grief. No matter your gender, your heart still breaks the same way. What matters is what you do next. Signs you're not healing, and how to start. Winona's pain wasn't always obvious, not even to herself, but the signs were there. She stopped caring for her body. She stopped feeling joy. She obsessed over the past and lost touch with the present. Maybe you felt the same. You replay old messages. You scroll through their photos. You keep the door cracked open, hoping they'll return. You tell people you're fine, but you're unraveling inside. You fill the void with distractions, hookups, alcohol, work, anything but silence. But silence is where healing begins. Winona turned the corner when she stopped avoiding her pain. She named it, faced it, and then, she did something with it. She journaled. She hiked. She went to therapy. She replaced rumination with ritual, small routines that grounded her. Healing didn't come in one grand gesture. It came in the little choices. The ones that said, I deserve to feel whole again. Finding purpose in the pain, a new path emerges. Winona Ryder didn't just survive heartbreak, she transformed through it. In losing what she thought defined her, she found what truly did. She explored causes she cared about. She reconnected with passions that had nothing to do with fame. Books, activism, solitude. She stopped trying to be everything for everyone, and started being enough for herself. She discovered that fulfillment isn't found in applause or attention, it's in authenticity. Not being perfect, but being real. Heartbreak became her reset button. It forced her to ask, what do I actually want from life, for me? And in answering that, she built a life that no longer needed validation. She didn't chase the next man, the next role, or the next headline. She embraced quiet purpose. And ironically, that's what made her magnetic again. Because when you stop chasing, you start attracting. From a place of peace, not pain. The quiet power of moving forward. Winona didn't announce her comeback. She didn't post a highlight reel. She simply kept going. No dramatic declarations, no public closure, just small, steady steps toward herself. She found love again. Not flashy or famous, but stable and private. She chose projects that mattered to her. She embraced aging in an industry obsessed with youth. And most importantly, she stopped trying to rewrite the past. She made peace with it. She once said, "It's really good to be able to think about past loves without feeling heartbroken. That's not detachment, that's growth." Her story reminds us that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer needing to fix what's gone. It means living so fully in the present that the past no longer defines you. Conclusion: from heartbroken to whole. Winona Ryder's story is not just about heartbreak, it's about rebirth. She loved deeply, she lost profoundly, and she fell apart in front of the world. But instead of letting the pain consume her, she let it shape her. Not overnight, not cleanly, but honestly. She stepped back when everyone else rushed forward. She listened inward when the world got loud. And in doing so, she found something fame could never offer: peace. She didn't return to the spotlight to be adored. She returned because she had something to say, something real. And she said it with presence, with power, with perspective. Her heartbreak didn't ruin her, it revealed her. And in that revelation, she found purpose beyond fame, and wholeness beyond romance. So if you're in the middle of your own heartbreak, remember this: you are not broken, you are becoming. And like Winona, you can turn the pain into something bigger, not a comeback, but a becoming. Enjoyed this video? Like the video, comment, and subscribe for more just like it.